Have you ever wondered what could be the ideal society? It's a question that has intrigued thinkers for centuries, and one that was at the heart of the philosophy of a man named Plato. Living in the 5th to 4th century BCE, Plato was a student of Socrates and a teacher of Aristotle, forming a trio that laid much of the groundwork for Western philosophy. Plato's philosophical journey took him on a quest for truth and virtue, exploring the realms of ethics, politics, metaphysics, and more. His dialogues, often featuring Socrates, have been a source of endless interpretation and debate, influencing generations of thinkers from philosophers to politicians. His vision of the ideal society, his theory of forms, and his thoughts on the nature of knowledge and reality continue to provoke, inspire, and challenge us. So, if you've ever pondered about the ideal society, you're in good company. Journey with us as we dive into the rich world of Plato's philosophy. The path to understanding Plato starts with his early dialogues. We enter the realm of Plato's philosophy through the gateway of his early dialogues. These dialogues, often referred to as Socratic dialogues, are named after the influential philosopher Socrates, who was Plato's mentor. In these dialogues, Socrates is the central character, showcasing his unique method of inquiry and exploration of truth. The Socratic dialogues are marked by a distinct style. They're not just dry philosophical discourses but lively, sometimes even dramatic conversations. The participants in these dialogues grapple with profound questions about life, morality, and the nature of knowledge itself. The key concept that reverberates through these dialogues is virtue. For Socrates, virtue was the highest form of excellence, the ultimate aim of human life. He believed that to live a good life, one must understand what virtue is, and strive to embody it in one's actions. The Socratic dialogues also introduce us to the Socratic method, a technique of questioning used by Socrates to stimulate critical thinking and to expose the contradictions in one's beliefs. This method is a cornerstone of Western analytical philosophy and critical thinking. In these dialogues, Socrates often plays the role of the gadfly, stinging his interlocutors with probing questions and challenging their preconceived notions. The goal is not to provide definitive answers, but to stimulate thought, to ignite the spark of philosophical inquiry. These early dialogues serve as a foundation for Plato's later philosophical works. They set the stage for the exploration of more complex ideas and theories that Plato would develop in his middle and late dialogues. From the concept of virtue to the Socratic method, Plato's early dialogues offer us a rich tapestry of ideas and insights. They invite us to question, to ponder, to seek truth and knowledge, just as Socrates did in the bustling streets of ancient Athens. These early dialogues paved the way for Plato's further philosophical explorations. Moving forward, Plato's philosophy evolved into his middle dialogues. In this stage of his work, Plato began to develop his own distinct philosophical thoughts, moving away from the teachings of his mentor, Socrates. One of the most significant concepts introduced during this period is the theory of forms. This theory proposes that the physical world we perceive is not the ultimate reality, but a distorted image of the true world of forms, which are eternal and unchangeable. Imagine this for a moment. The chair you're sitting on, the cup you're drinking from, they are all imperfect copies of the perfect form of a chair or a cup. This world of forms, according to Plato, is the only place where knowledge can be obtained because they represent the eternal and unchangeable truth. This brings us to another key aspect of Plato's middle dialogues, the concept of knowledge. Plato argued that knowledge is innate and not derived from experience. Essentially, we are all born with a certain level of knowledge, and our learning process is just a matter of remembering what we already know. This perspective is famously illustrated in the Meno dialogue, where Socrates demonstrates that a young slave boy without any prior education can solve a complex mathematical problem through careful questioning. The Republic, another pivotal work from this period, Plato presents his vision of an ideal society ruled by philosopher kings who are individuals with a deep understanding of the forms and the concept of the good. This idea, along with his theory of forms, has had a profound influence on the development of Western philosophy and thought. This period of Plato's work is marked by a shift from questioning others to developing his own philosophical ideas. His middle dialogues are not just about questioning the world around him, but also about constructing a comprehensive philosophical system that seeks to explain the nature of reality, knowledge, and society. Plato's middle dialogues represent a significant shift in his philosophical thought. In his late dialogues, Plato's philosophy reaches its maturity. Through this period, Plato delved deeper into political philosophy, metaphysics and cosmology, producing some of his most influential and complex work. His political philosophy, as presented in the Laws and the Statesman, focused on the ideal state, where the law is supreme and the rulers are philosophers. Plato's late dialogues emphasize the importance of a well-ordered society, where the rulers are committed to the common good, rather than their self-interests. In the realm of metaphysics, the Parmenides dialogue presents a rigorous analysis of his own theory of forms. Plato uses a series of intricate arguments to challenge the very existence of the forms, pushing the limits of his own philosophy. Through this self-critique, he brings about a profound understanding of the abstract world of forms and their relationship with the physical world. Plato's cosmology is most vividly explored in the Timaeus, where he presents a detailed account of the creation of the universe. He portrays the cosmos as a living being, created by a divine craftsman, also known as the demiurge. Here, Plato merges philosophy with mythology, exploring the nature of the physical world and its divine origin. His late dialogues also include the Sophist, Philebus, and Theaetetus, among others. Each of these dialogues presents a new perspective on knowledge, reality, and the nature of the soul, further enriching Plato's philosophical landscape. The philosophical maturity of Plato's late dialogues is evident in the depth and complexity of the ideas presented. His exploration of political philosophy, metaphysics, and cosmology not only marked the peak of his philosophical journey, but also laid the groundwork for future philosophical inquiry. These dialogues provide a comprehensive view of Plato's philosophical thought, reflecting his relentless pursuit of truth and his commitment to understanding the world. These late dialogues showcase Plato's most mature philosophical thoughts. Plato's philosophy didn't exist in a vacuum. It influenced and was influenced by many philosophers. Let's delve into how Plato's intellectual prowess radiated through the philosophical world, shaping the minds of many who followed in his footsteps. Arguably, Plato's most famous student was none other than Aristotle, a philosopher who would go on to have an enormous impact on Western thought. Aristotle was a keen observer and questioned everything, a trait that Plato admired and nurtured. From Plato, Aristotle learned the art of questioning, the importance of ideas, and the power of dialogue. However, Aristotle didn't merely parrot his teacher's teachings. Instead, he critically examined them, leading to his own unique philosophical perspectives. For instance, while Plato emphasized the significance of abstract ideas, Aristotle focused on the empirical world and the concrete realities that we can observe and experience. But Plato's influence didn't stop at Aristotle. His philosophical fingerprints can be seen in the works of many other philosophers throughout history. Neoplatonism, a school of thought that emerged hundreds of years after Plato's death, sought to interpret and develop Plato's ideas. Notable Neoplatonists like Plotinus and Proclus borrowed heavily from Plato's philosophy, integrating it into their own philosophical frameworks. Even beyond the realm of philosophy, Plato's influence is pervasive. His ideas about justice, virtue, and the nature of the good life have found their way into Western legal and political thought. His dialogues have influenced countless authors and playwrights, and his allegory of the cave continues to be a powerful metaphor in discussions about knowledge, reality, and enlightenment. In essence, Plato's philosophical legacy has seeped into every corner of our intellectual world. His teachings have been embraced, critiqued, developed, and reinterpreted, but their influence remains undeniable. From Aristotle to Neoplatonists to modern philosophers and beyond, Plato's philosophical footprints are indelibly etched in the sands of intellectual history. Plato's philosophical legacy continues to shape our intellectual landscape. Even today we stand on the shoulders of this philosophical giant, gazing at the world through a lens that he helped to craft. Plato's philosophy is a vast ocean, and we've only skimmed the surface. Just as the endless waves of the sea, Plato's thoughts are a ceaseless source of wisdom and inspiration. Today, we ventured into that ocean, starting with his early dialogues, where we saw a young Plato questioning the world around him. Then, we journeyed into his middle dialogues, where he began to develop his own voice and ideas. Here we saw the birth of his renowned theory of forms, a concept that has profoundly shaped philosophical thought. We continued our voyage into his late dialogues, where his matured philosophical ideas emerged. It's here that we saw Plato's profound influence on other philosophers. His ideas, like ripples in the water, spread far and wide, touching the minds of thinkers throughout history, and continue to do so even today. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Plato's philosophy. Remember, the pursuit of knowledge never ends.